She laughed in my face in front of everyone, said I was lucky. She even brought me to the anniversary gala at all. They thought I'd swallow it. They thought I'd keep smiling while she clung to her special guest. But if they expected me to stay quiet forever, they should have known better. My revenge started the moment she said, "Don't embarrass me tonight, Mark." Before we dive in, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments if you've ever been disrespected in public. Your support means everything. The night started like it always did when Laura had an audience. Lights, noise, and her pretending she ran the whole world. It was Friday, early evening, warm air outside, cold air inside the banquet hall. Chandeliers glowed like a movie set. Everyone was dressed up, polished shoes, tight smiles, hands holding champagne they didn't even like. I had just finished fixing a busted furnace for a client across town and barely had time to change. My shirt was ironed, but not fancy enough for her taste. She let me know. "Try to stand straighter," she whispered at the entrance, adjusting my collar like I was a kid. "The board members are here tonight." I didn't respond. No point. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking at me. Ever since she'd started climbing the ranks at her real estate firm, she treated me like something she'd picked up at a yard sale. Useful, but not something to brag about. Inside, the hall buzzed with chatter. Tables covered in white linen. A string quartet warming up near the stage. I could smell roast beef, candles, too much perfume. The night should have felt elegant. Instead, it felt like I'd walked into a trap. Her coworkers swarmed her the second we stepped in. "Laura, you look incredible. Oh my God, who did your hair? You brought Mark. How sweet." Sweet. That word always landed wrong. Like they were patting a dog. Laura beamed, soaking it in. She looped her arm through mine, but only loosely, like she didn't want to wrinkle her dress. "This is an important night," she murmured. "Please don't, overreact if you get uncomfortable." Overreact? Uncomfortable? I wasn't sure what she meant. Not yet that we drifted toward the drink table. I poured myself a Coke. She grabbed champagne. And then, right on cue, her voice brightened 2 octaves. "Oh my God, Daniel. You made it." I turned. Tall guy. Perfect hair. Perfect teeth. A suit that screamed money. He gave her a hug that lasted 2 beats too long. "This is my mentor," she said, emphasizing the word like it meant more. "Daniel practically taught me everything." He grinned at her like he agreed that I offered my hand. "Mark." He shook it, barely. More like he let my hand touch his fingertips. "Right. Laura's partner. Partner. Not boyfriend. Not fiancé. Not man she lived with. Partner." Like I was her lab assistant. The conversation shifted instantly. The two of them reminiscing about late nights at the office, big deals they pulled off, private jokes that didn't include me. She laughed too loudly at everything he said, leaned in too close, touched his arm more than she touched mine. People around us noticed. A few coworkers shared looks. One woman raised her eyebrows. A guy smirked like he knew something I didn't. I stood there quietly, sipping my Coke, listening, observing. Laura didn't introduce me again, didn't include me, didn't even look at me except to give a subtle hand gesture telling me to move slightly, so I wasn't blocking the light. It was when she said it, when she turned to him and said, laughing, "Ignore Mark, he gets intimidated at events like this," that something inside me shifted. The people around us chuckled politely. She didn't notice the way my expression didn't change. She thought I'd take it. She always thought that. But I learned a long time ago, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is sharpening the blade. The string quartet started playing softly. Dinner was about to begin. Laura hooked her arm through Daniel's again, his, not mine, and said, "Come on, we're at the front table. Important people only." I stopped walking. She turned, irritated. "Mark, what are you doing? Don't make a scene." I looked at her calmly. No raised voice. No accusation. No argument. Just quiet. The kind that makes people uneasy. She didn't expect that. Not from me. "Are you coming or not?" she snapped, cheeks flushing as a few heads turned. That I smiled faintly. Not a happy smile. more like a door closing softly. And right then, right there, in the middle of the glittering hall with everyone watching, I made a decision that would change the entire night, a decision that would leave Laura wishing she never opened her mouth. I didn't answer her right away. I just stood there, letting the noise of the room settle around us. The clinking glasses, the string quartet tuning between songs, the hum of conversations fading as more people realized Laura and I were no longer moving toward the front table. Laura hated pauses like this. She needed control, needed momentum, needed to steer the scene. A pause meant someone else was holding the wheel. I finally murmured, "You go ahead," keeping my expression unreadable. Her eyes narrowed, confusion mixing with irritation. "Mark, stop being weird. The board is waiting. Daniel is waiting. Just come on." She tugged at my sleeve like I was embarrassing her with my refusal to heel on command. The irony. I stepped back a little, giving her space, but not in the way she expected. "I'll join you later," I said. Quiet, calm, polite. And she didn't know what to do with that tone. It wasn't argumentative, wasn't submissive, wasn't anything she could manipulate. She turned to Daniel, as if hoping he'd throw her a lifeline. He shrugged and said, "Let him be. Some guys aren't built for big events." The smirk was subtle, but I caught it. So did two people behind him. And Laura laughed. Too loud, too quick, like she needed to match his tone. "Right. Well, come on," she said to him. "Not me," and walked toward the front table, all poise and sparkle, like the moment didn't sting her pride. But it did. Her shoulders were too stiff. Her smile was a little too tight. I watched the two of them drift through the crowd together, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Not intimate exactly, but not distant either. People noticed. I could feel the eyes, the whispering. "Isn't she here with him?" Looks thrown in my direction. Fine. Let them watch. I moved to the corner of the room where the servers were refilling drinks and grabbed a bottled water, twisting the cap slowly while scanning the room. I wasn't jealous. That part surprises people when I explain it. I wasn't boiling with rage or plotting some dramatic outburst. What I felt was something colder, cleaner, like a window had opened and fresh air finally came through. Because when someone shows you who they truly are in public, with witnesses, you don't have to question anything anymore. The front table was positioned near the stage, all 8 seats filled with executives and spouses. Except one, mine. But Laura didn't leave it empty. She gestured for someone to take it, a young guy from accounting, maybe mid-20s, nervous, grateful for the sudden upgrade. The symbolism couldn't have been louder if she'd taken a megaphone and announced, "My partner doesn't matter enough to be here." People watched. And again, fine. Let them watch. At one point, Daniel leaned toward her, whispering something. She tilted her head back and laughed, hand touching his forearm. Her eyes drifted toward me for just a fraction of a second, maybe expecting me to glare or sulk or pretend not to notice. Instead, I looked right back at her with the calmest expression I've ever worn in my life. No jealousy, no anger, just clarity. She blinked, startled, and looked away. A server approached with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. I took one, more out of instinct than hunger. The room felt chilly, even with all the warm lighting. But maybe that was just the shift happening inside me, the quiet settling of something final. I overheard 2 women near the drink table whispering, "Isn't that Laura's boyfriend? Why isn't he with her? Did you see how she's acting with Daniel?" I didn't respond, didn't react, didn't even pretend to care. Instead, I pulled out my phone, not to text, not to record, not for evidence or drama, just to send a single message to someone who didn't need explanations. "Trevor, my closest friend. You got room at your place tonight?" The reply came seconds later. "Always. You all right?" I typed, "Ask me in a few hours." He responded with a thumbs up emoji. Strange how a single, simple exchange can feel more like support than 1,000 empty reassurances from the person you live with. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and looked around the room again, not searching for her anymore, just absorbing everything. The music, the conversations, the people who noticed the tension, and the people who pretended not to. I watched Laura from across the room as she held court at the table, telling a story with sweeping gestures, exaggerating like she always did when she wanted to impress someone. She leaned in toward Daniel. He leaned in too. Their heads were too close, their laughter too matched. And the more she performed, the more obvious it became that she was doing it for me, not for him. She kept checking if I was watching. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. I simply watched the whole scene like it wasn't even about me, because suddenly it wasn't. And as the main course was served, and the lights dimmed for the first speech of the night, I realized something with crystal clarity. The moment she dismissed me at the door, she dismissed herself from my life. Quietly, cleanly, without realizing she'd already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I set down my drink and straightened my tie. Not for her, not for anyone in that room, but for myself, before walking toward the back of the hall with a calmness that surprised even me. The night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But whatever happened next, it wouldn't be me begging for respect ever again. I walked down the side of the hall, weaving between tables and servers, not in a rush, not trying to be dramatic, just giving myself space from the circus Laura was so desperate to star in. The first speech had begun on stage. Some executive thanking donors, cracking rehearsed jokes, gesturing toward the charity banners hung near the podium. People clapped politely. Silverware clinked. Glasses chimed. But every now and then, someone's eyes drifted toward me, maybe wondering why the man who arrived with Laura wasn't sitting beside her. Maybe silently piecing together a story she never meant to expose. I didn't care. Not anymore. I stopped near the back wall where the lighting was dimmer and the noise softened into a manageable hum. One of the event photographers snapped a picture of the crowd and lowered her camera. She gave me a curious look. "You okay?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Better than I've been in a long time." She didn't press, didn't pry, just smiled in a way that made it clear she'd seen this kind of dynamic before. "If you need a quiet area," she said, pointing toward a small side hallway, "there's an empty lounge over there." I thanked her and walked that way, pausing at the threshold. The lounge was dark except for a lamp in the corner, casting a warm glow on a few scattered chairs and a glass coffee table. Silence. Real silence. I stood there alone, thinking about the past 3 years with Laura. The good moments, yes, but also the thousand little cuts I shrugged off because I thought they were normal. Jokes made at my expense. Plans changed without asking me. Her habit of telling people, "Mark doesn't mind," even when I did. All those moments were weight. And tonight, that weight finally slipped off. I felt lighter with every breath. My phone buzzed again. A text from Trevor. "Need me to pick you up?" I typed back, "No, I'm good. Just preparing." "Preparing for what?" he wrote. I stared at the screen a moment before typing. "Truth." I put the phone away and walked back out toward the hall. Not toward Laura, not toward the stage, just toward the center of the room where everything intersected. The speeches, the tables, the servers, the whispers. The gala was entering its second hour. The CEO was now at the podium, giving a long-winded monologue about growth and opportunity. People pretended to listen. A few covertly checked their phones. Others scanned the room. When I stepped back into the crowd, a couple at a nearby table glanced at me and then subtly at Laura. The woman whispered something behind her hand. The man nodded slowly, understanding before she finished the sentence. Amazing how strangers can see patterns the people in them refuse to acknowledge. As I reached the drink table again, Daniel stood, excused himself from the front table, and began walking directly toward me. His confidence was almost theatrical, shoulders back, chin lifted slightly, stride steady like a man approaching a negotiation he expected to win. When he got close, he gave me a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mind if I have a word?" he asked, nodding toward the hallway. I shrugged. "Say it here." His smile tightened. "Look, I know events like this can feel overwhelming. Overwhelming. That word again. They were so sure I was made of glass. Laura's worked hard for this career, he continued. She's under pressure. Sometimes she forgets to balance things. He paused, clearly expecting me to react, maybe to defend myself or accuse him. When I didn't, he added, she's always spoken highly of you. But tonight she's in work mode. Work mode. Like that excused everything. He shifted his weight, lowering his voice. I just wanted to check in. Make sure you weren't misreading things. I looked at him, and for the first time that night, I let a small hint of expression show. A raised brow, subtle but sharp. Misreading? He cleared his throat. You know how she is. Friendly. Energetic. She didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I tilted my head slightly. Funny. She's the one who seemed uncomfortable when I didn't sit where she wanted. His smile faltered, but only for a moment. He'd trained his face well. These events require poise. And fixtures, I said. Furniture. Props. The irony didn't miss him. He looked away briefly. Listen, I'm not trying to cause trouble. Neither am I cut in softly. Not yet. That last word made his jaw tighten. Before he could respond, movement at the front table caught his attention. Laura was watching us, her expression strained, eyes darting between us. I didn't know what story she was constructing in her head, but she looked nervous. She had reason to be. Daniel straightened his jacket. Well, if you need anything, just ask. I nodded once. He walked back to the table, slower this time. He looked thoughtful, maybe uneasy. Good. I stayed exactly where I was, unnoticed by most, but noticed enough by the right people. That's when the COO walked onto the stage and said, before we bring out our final speakers tonight, we have a short video presentation highlighting the team leaders who exceeded this year's goals. Laura straightened in her chair, smoothing her dress. Her big moment. The lights dimmed. The screen illuminated. Music swelled. Photos flashed. Sales teams, realtors shaking hands, contract signings. Then came the individual highlights. Applause rose in waves as names appeared. And then, there she was. Laura Bennett, lead negotiator, Silver Crest Realty. Her photo filled the screen. Everyone clapped. She lifted her chin with pride. But something else appeared on the screen, something she didn't expect. A second photo. One no one should have had. One she sure as hell didn't submit. And the room reacted. A ripple. A shift. A sharp collective inhale. Because whatever that extra photo was, it wasn't professional. It wasn't flattering. And it wasn't something she ever wanted projected on a 20-foot screen in front of her entire industry. And as the murmurs rose and Laura's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock, I just stood there in the darkened hall. Quiet. Still. Calm. The truth had finally stepped into the light. For a second, the entire hall froze. The lights from the giant screen washed across every stunned face, catching reflections in wine glasses and silverware. People leaned forward instinctively, squinting as if they couldn't trust what they were seeing. It wasn't anything obscene, nothing illegal, nothing YouTube would ban, but it was intimate. Too intimate for a gala. A selfie Laura took months ago, angled just so, meant for someone she trusted privately, except it wasn't me. And everyone in the room could tell that. The lighting, the pose, the look in her eyes. It was obviously not taken for a boyfriend fixing furnaces. It was taken for someone she wanted to impress. Someone she wanted to pull closer. Someone she wanted to give access to parts of her life I never got. The image wasn't scandalous, but the context was. The board members stiffened. A few spouses whispered urgently. Someone in the back gasped loud enough for half the hall to hear. The COO, unaware at first, kept narrating over the slideshow until he finally turned and saw it. His voice cracked mid-sentence. Let's move to the next slide, please." The screen went black. The music sputtered, then stopped. The room fell into a soundless vacuum. And all eyes turned to Laura. She looked small for the first time since I'd known her. Shoulders hunched, lips trembling, hands shaking violently as she tried to hide her face while pretending everything was fine. She stuttered something to the woman beside her, an excuse, a denial, a plea, but her voice collapsed instantly. People weren't looking at her with judgment. They were looking at her with recognition. They'd seen the dynamic all night, the dismissiveness, the flirtation with Daniel, the way she paraded herself like royalty. Now the shine had cracked. I didn't take a step toward her, didn't raise my voice, didn't make a scene. I simply stood at the drink table, watching with that same quiet calm I'd carried since the beginning of the night. The COO cleared his throat, tried to salvage the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, a minor technical error. Please give us a moment." The crowd murmured, the tide of whispers crashing in every direction. Was that meant for her mentor? Oh God, does her boyfriend know? She sent that to someone at work? Poor guy. He's standing right there. I felt none of their pity, none of their curiosity, just a clarity that settled deeper and deeper into my chest. Laura finally stumbled away from the front table and pushed through the aisle toward me, her heels clicking unevenly, her breath coming in shallow bursts. "Mark," she whispered harshly, eyes glossy with fear. "I don't know what happened. I don't know how that photo got. Someone must have hacked. This isn't what it looks like." I didn't say a word. That terrified her more than yelling ever could have. She grabbed my sleeve. "Please, please, don't look at me like that. I didn't do anything wrong tonight. I didn't, tonight." The irony nearly made me laugh. Around us, the entire hall was still buzzing, fractured into pockets of gossip. Executives avoided looking at her. Her coworkers whispered behind napkins. Daniel, pale and stone still, stared at the floor. Someone from the AV booth announced they were resetting equipment. The awkwardness in the air was thick enough to touch. She tugged at my arm again. "We need to leave," she begged. "Right now? Please, Mark, come with me. We can talk somewhere else." I gently pulled my arm back. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Those words hit her harder than the photo ever could. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "Everyone's judging me. They're saying things they think," I said quietly. "Exactly what you gave them a reason to think." Her eyes widened like I'd slapped her, but I hadn't raised a hand. Not once in 3 years. She searched my face for anger. There was none. That scared her most of all. She needed a reaction to cling to, something to fight, something to manipulate. But calm? Calm meant closure. Calm meant decisions she couldn't undo. "I didn't cheat on you," she insisted. "I didn't. I swear. I never. I don't care who you sent that to," I said. "I care that you treated me like a placeholder while you performed for him." Her throat bobbed. She looked around the room again, at the people pretending not to stare, at the board members whispering urgently, at the interns snickering behind their hands. Her world, the world she obsessed over, was collapsing, and she was desperate for something solid to grab. She reached for me again. I stepped back. "Mark." The single word broke completely. I took a breath, let it out slowly, and said, "I'm done." No yelling, no scene, no explanation, just truth. A clean cut. She froze, unable to move or speak. I walked past her, past the tables, past the murmuring crowd. Every step felt lighter. The photographer from earlier caught my eye as I reached the exit. She gave me a subtle nod, not approval, not pity, just understanding. Outside, the night air hit me like a blessing. I pulled out my phone, sent Trevor one message, "Ready." His reply came instantly, "On my way." I waited at the curb under the glow of a street lamp while the muffled noise of the Gala spilled through the doors behind me. Within minutes, Trevor's truck pulled up. I climbed in. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. "You good?" he said softly. I nodded. "Yeah, I really am." As we drove away, the hall grew smaller in the rearview mirror until eventually, it disappeared completely. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was something quieter, deeper, more honest than anything I'd felt in that entire relationship. Freedom. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly who I was without her. If you made it to the end, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and leave a comment telling me what you think. Your support means the world, and I've got more stories waiting for you.